We're live.
We're live. All right. It's the Senate Education Committee on the afternoon of February 24th. For the person we're doing today is taking up S232, enacting the public libraries and Department of Libraries. And we have with us today, we haven't heard from previously. I'll let you introduce yourself.
So my name is Nicole Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Vermont After School.
Okay. And you don't know all of us, so we'll go on.
Hi, Potter Machine.
It's really nice to meet you.
Dave Weeks, serving Rutland County.
Excellent. Thank you.
One person from the Bennington Senate District.
Terry Williams, also from Rutland. Steve Heffernan, Addison County District.
The record, you are.
For the record, I'm Nicole Miller, Executive Director of Vermont After School.
Okay. So, well, you know the history, you probably watched some of it. So, okay. So we've been spending a lot of time on this bill. And I think you're here for one provision in particular. We talk about that. The one provision about a reasonable amount or some percentage for libraries. But I think we wanted you in it. I think it's really that you're do what how much you receive the grants and the whole thing. So yeah, it's marvelous.
Absolutely. So I'll start by reading my written testimony, and then if there are questions, I'm happy to do whoever the chair.
You have a copy of that?
Yes, it's posted. I
Okay.
printed all the out yesterday.
Okay.
So again, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Vermont After School. Vermont After School is a nonprofit organization that does not run after school and summer programs. Rather, we do a lot of professional development support for those that are running after school and summer programs. So we are working to strengthen after school and summer programs to empower young people and to expand access so that any child or youth in Vermont who wants to attend after school and summer programming has the opportunity to do so. Our organization works with all types of after school and summer programs or programming entities. Those include childcare programs, schools, libraries, parks and recreation, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, museums, teen centers, and many other youth-serving organizations. I'm a member of the After School and Summer Advisory Committee created through Act 78. And our organization also serves as the Vermont affiliate for both the National After School Association and the 50 State After School Network. And I really thank you for the opportunity to speak about S232 today. Excuse me. I wholeheartedly support public libraries as part of the after school and summer landscape in Vermont. But I have concerns about S232 and setting aside funds for a certain type of entity. And I'll walk through a few points of why I have concerns. First, libraries are already eligible. When we worked on that language for eligibility for these funds, it was crafted as public, private, or nonprofit organizations. It was intentionally flexible to allow any entity to apply as long as they were using the funds in alignment with the fund's purpose to expand after school and summer programming. Second, I'm really concerned about setting a precedent. This is not the first time that we've had a group come forward and try to ask for a certain percentage or set aside of funds. And frankly, there are so many entities that could come forward and do that. Those include municipal parks and recreation committees or departments, schools, both public and private, childcare businesses, libraries, mentoring organizations, career technical centers, museums, teen centers, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, scouting groups, small and large nonprofits. I could frankly go on. So there are a lot of players in this space, and it's really important for us to be able to see that as a whole and be able to look and see what's happening community by community for programming, and also be able to talk about variety, who are the players in that space. And again, I'm really concerned about setting a precedent that would diminish the state and frankly the After School and Summer Advisory Committee's ability to track progress towards universal after school. And again, that program variety and access to variety and programming and quality over the next several years. Also, it doesn't allow Vermont communities to identify the best partners and entities to operate programming within their given community. It basically says, well, here's one thing that can happen. And we're setting that aside and really releasing some of that choice for communities. Third, I think that there are some administrative options. And I would encourage the committee to allow those of us that are involved to have some internal conversations within the Agency of Education, within the After School Summer Advisory Group, with partners, with libraries and with others, to look at, well, where is it a challenge? How can we streamline the application? How can we do some options that don't involve policy changes to Act 78 directly? And how can we then leverage those partners like the Vermont Libraries Association, the Department of Libraries, and those of us that are already involved to make sure that libraries and other small nonprofits, right? There are lots of other entities that haven't been able to access the funds either yet. And what I have heard in some cases is it's about language. It's about the length of the application. And I'm particularly working with the agency to provide that feedback. And in some cases, they have made some tweaks to that language. And so again, I think that there are some administrative options that can happen that don't involve a policy change.
Are you almost done?
I'm almost done.
Okay, finish and then I'll.
Okay, absolutely. I will say also, while I was not there, I know the After School and Summer Advisory Committee that met earlier this month did talk about this specific bill and some of the challenges around the application length. And I do know that Kendall Smith, who is the chair of that committee, Department of Labor Commissioner, that she said she is willing to come in and testify and share a little bit about that should it be decided by the committee. Lastly, I'll just say that I know that there have been a lot of questions from this committee about whether libraries have been able to access the funds, the Act 78 funds specifically. And while the agency event did report that hasn't been able to happen yet, libraries were able to access two really critical funding sources that happened during the pandemic that were designed for community-based organizations, non-LEAs, which included libraries, municipalities, et cetera. Those included the Summer Matters for All grant funding that Vermont After School administered in the summer of 2021, as well as the After School and Summer Expanding Access grants in summer 2022, After School 22-23, and summer 2023. That grant ranged from $20,000 to $200,000, depending on how many parts of that grant period they were serving. And during that Summer Matters for All grant, again, that was 2021, we did award 7 public libraries funding through those funds. And then during the After School and Summer After School and Summer Expanding Access grants, again, that was 22-23, we awarded another 7 public libraries funding. So
COVID funds?
those were COVID ESSER funds, yep. So again, while it hasn't been able to happen under Act 78 yet, it does demonstrate that libraries are a really critical part of the after school and summer landscape, and we're able to apply for, receive, and access grant funds. And I do think that Agency of Ed is wanting to make sure that all entities are able to access those funds. So I'll pause there and, thank you.
Just tell us first, help me understand, how do you interact with the agency in the distribution of these funds?
Sure.
What's your role? Because when Johannes was here, you didn't come up. So they just talked about it's them doing it, but you've got a role there.
So we have a couple of different roles. One is as a member of the After School and Summer Advisory Committee. That group is primarily made up of state leaders across Department of Mental Health, Department of Health, Department of Labor, many others, Governor's Office. And then there are various members of the public that have been attending, including Jeanette from the Department of Libraries. So that's one role that Vermont After School plays. So we're advisory to the Agency of Education in how to spend and track those Act 78 dollars. Second, transparently, Vermont After School has a contract with the Agency of Education to support the 21st Century Community Learning Center program or funded programs. That's work that we do that's very similar to the Child Development Division, which we do a lot of professional development and training, support for individuals, site assessments. So we do a chunk of work in that area that we do with a variety of other programs as well. Third is what the grants I mentioned, because everything was coming down so fast and furious during the pandemic, the Agency of Education was focused on supporting those ESSER pandemic era funds within schools, and they asked Vermont After School to administer the community-based organization funding, which we did during that time period.
Did you say at the beginning that you were 501c3?
We are a nonprofit organization,
How do you get,
through some of those state contracts and grants that I mentioned, as well as private organizations and a little bit of fee for service.
it's just to follow up once more before give you over Senator Williams. What role do you actually play in the distribution of the funds that come from the cannabis money?
Not any direct, so I don't read the grants, I don't do any of the scoring, excuse me. Really, our role as the advisory committee is just to give feedback to the Agency of Education. Specifically, I see my role as Vermont After School is being able to lift up voices that I'm hearing from the field, again, across that large landscape of providers, and make sure that voice is being heard at that table.
Thank you. Senator Williams.
So you don't have anything to do with the funding?
No.
Is there a list someplace of where the money goes?
We actually have.
Yeah.
You didn't know it, but it's there.
Okay.
It's got it. It's in your file, right? Yeah. So, I'm intrigued by what you're saying. You're talking about giving some time to figure out when we talked about this with the agency, it at least became clear to me that the application, even the one that takes only 10 hours instead of 1 week, and then the reporting requirements are, he even put it this way, small grant or the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I sort of listened to that and went, okay, we are effectively moving out libraries. And because we all know our local libraries, they've got, and a lot of them are tiny and they have, and yet small amounts of money could actually make a huge difference for them in the summer or after school or summer, whatever programs they're trying to do. And so we and one Senator Weeks, said, effective, the grant programs are working right. That's the real issue because, and I raised the issue with Johannes about doing a very light version with, it's a page and a half or 2 pages, and then your reporting is a page, or it's just like we're handing out, a couple $1,000 here and there, or a few thousand, depending on what it is, instead of having it be such a monumental pain to deal with. And is that what you're talking about? Trying to.
I think that's one option that those of us that are on the After School and Summer Advisory Committee are having conversations about, and are wanting to bring that forth to the Agency of Education to really implore them to consider that. And what needs to, the approach that I would take would be to look at what is in that reporting requirement, what's in that grant application, and how can it really be streamlined and reduced down just commensurate with the amount of funds requested. I think another option that we did see a little bit during the grant funds that we administered is we saw a couple of libraries come in for a grant application together. And I think that might be one thing that could be considered as well. I just think that there are a lot of avenues that can be explored. And I'm really concerned about, again, setting aside a percentage of funds when I know there are 15 other types of entities that will also try to do the same. And then that really diminishes the state as well as the After School Summer Advisory Committee's ability to look across the state. What progress are we making with the investment of those funds? Where we see access expand, where we see programming expand, and be able to look at that holistically across the whole state. As well as I know that the agency is working to build out some of the quality and other supports for all types of grants, some of these access gate funds. And so, I worry that they might lose out on those opportunities as well.
Well, I've seen a lot of organizations that make grants have very simple for small amounts of small organizations because they don't about. Okay.
I think that there are options available, and I know that the agency has worked hard to stand up this grant program, and I applaud them for those efforts. And I think now we see where there are programs and types of entities. Libraries are not the only ones that I've heard of. I've spoken to several teen centers, I've spoken to several smaller nonprofits, and they too have have felt some of that concern or tension, like, oh, this feels like it's too big for what we're trying to do. And so I think that now we're 2 years in. Now what can we do to revise the grant program and consider, is there another third tier? Is there another option so that we can create, again, some more equity across all the types of entities that are able to apply and receive funds?
Yeah, Senator Sheet.
So maybe this is a question for you, for election council, but I thought initially the idea was to allow the Department of Libraries to basically do one application for a chunk of money and then disperse it as they see fit to different libraries rather than the 5%. So the 5% is a new concept.
By the way, there are two versions
See,
in front of you. The other one just has the language of reasonable amount. It's kind of a policy choice yet to be made. We heard somebody came in and talked about 5%. So we have one version showing that, we have the other version showing that. But your point is still well taken. Whether, and that's something that I don't know. I think the Department of Libraries, if I recall your testimony, you can't be in that. So you are on the record.
Catherine Villeneuve, State Librarian and Commissioner of the Department of Libraries. My team and I looked at the application materials and we did not see a way for us as a department to apply and then sub-grant the funds to public libraries. And I'm not a legal expert, but that was just our look at the various options, both the smaller amount of money and the larger amount of money, the 10-hour application, the 20-hour application. We did not, when we asked for some information about, was there an opportunity, could we do this, how could we do this earlier this year, there was not a clear path forward for my colleague and I to pursue. That does not mean that there could not be a path forward. It just means that when I'm reading the language of the application, it didn't seem to speak to a department of the state or an agency of the state applying for funds to administer. And so we did not pursue an application during the application period. At this moment, the state librarian or a designee are not on the committee. But the committee's been very generous welcoming us, and you must not have been there at the most recent meeting.
I was running another after school meeting.
Yeah, I attended and gave a presentation to the committee. Hi. To the council about summer reading at libraries and what that is in general, not with a specific ask. But that was a public meeting and can be watched, and the committee's response to that and their conversation is all there for the public. I did not hear even at that point that the current structure would support the department applying year after year to have some portion of the money for the program. The department's program, its current program, is at the scale of one of these subrecipients of the grants or the recipients of the grant. As I had shared with you all previously, our entire summer reading program funding in recent years has been roughly $50,000. So when individual libraries are applying, they might be looking at a much smaller amount per library. Our grant to public libraries right now is $350 per year. So that's, I think that there is a potential, and I would love to explore that potential if this language does not end up in the final bill. We at the department would argue very strongly that libraries are a trusted, reliable source in most communities in Vermont, not every community in Vermont, and that the statewide summer reading program is a really valuable thing that we are doing as a state to support literacy for all kids. And that is different in my mind. But of course, I'm the state librarian. That's what I'm paid to say. It's very different in my mind from some of the other programs, which are also valuable in their own rights. So I just for context, that's where the department is at this moment.
And
I'll go last. I mean, I was.
four hands at once.
Just have a follow.
Follow up, okay.
So I'm looking at the document that we have from AOE. Do we know if some of these entities, like speaking a random one, the Addison Central School District, of the almost 75 grand that they get, does that get dispersed from the district to different private after-school programs? Does anybody know?
I can speak to what I think
Yes.
happens. So, in my past, I ran a 21C after school program thing for the Southwest Supervisor Unit. And so what we did as part of our grant, and I know that there are a lot of grantees that do this, and I expect that the same is true for the Act 78 grantees. That the funds might be awarded to the school district or to any other type of entity, and then they are partnering with many of the other community-based providers to share those resources back and forth. For example, I know the Burlington School District has agreements with like the Boys and Girls Club of Burlington, in which there's some funding that goes to them.
Thank you. So I just a comment that, I'm at the moment not opposed to having 5% in there if it's going for another state agency. But if there's a way that's not agreeable for the committee, then I'm also supportive of having a similar situation that we have now for some of these other entities where the Department of Libraries applies for its own grant, however much they get, and then they can disperse them to the multiple smaller libraries throughout the state. I think that overcomes the bureaucratic issue of just the length of the application for it.
So just to put this in here, Daphne, we have an agency coming in on
Thursday.
Thursday. They were supposed to be here today originally, but canceled. They'll be on Thursday to answer, because I think what we also heard is that right now the application doesn't work in a way that would let that happen.
Right.
So, okay. Senator Pepper.
Well, as to Senator Machines point, I believe that it would be best to give the library a little bit of the funding to sue as cut some of the bureaucracy out of it. Because now you have a group where they know what they need. And I guess for me, it's finding that number, that percentage that the library says this is plenty. Because I wouldn't think every year we have to come back and go through the same application when it's like, hey, this is what we had to fill out. Well, you got to fill out the application. Didn't fill out the application in time, you don't get the money. So I think it would be automatic, but the libraries have been instituted of Vermont since Vermont's been Vermont. So it's worth giving them a little bit of the body.
So I had a side conversation and I don't think anybody wants to, not accept money that might be handed to them. But at the same time, my understanding is the Agency of Education asked for $700,000 for Vermont Read. And my understanding is they haven't collaborated with the libraries at all on that. I've been wanting testimony on literacy and their request for $700,000 for Vermont Reads. And there's a lot of things that still floor me. It floors me that I don't want to be loud. It floors me that Agency of Education has money sitting in this fund that they can't figure out how to get to people, and they haven't come proactively with the solution to that. And it floors me that they're saying they're launching Vermont Reads, and we're talking all about summer reading and literacy programs, and they haven't done anything to collaborate with the libraries. Good. This just to me comes back to us trying to solve problems around an agency that is not doing enough to partner with people.
Go back to my original question. This went down through the list, there's only one entity in my district
Mhm.
that got 56,000, that was the Boys and Girls Club.
Mhm.
Yet there was one other entity that asked for 121,000, didn't get it. So
Mhm.
who's the traffic cop for the one of those? I also see supervisory unions and school districts in here. My understanding was that money was not supposed to be given to the LEAs.
So I can speak to the eligibility language that is in legislation or is in, I'm not the word, I'm so sorry. The legislation that currently governs Act 78 is the eligibility language is public, private, and nonprofit organizations. So that does include schools. I think you might be thinking about the, there was a hiccup around the funds originally were in the ed fund. And there was a hiccup around that because the poison pill thing that is not part of this current conversation. So Act 78 funds are a special fund and the eligibility is public, private, and nonprofit organizations, which includes schools, it includes municipalities, it includes libraries. I wonder, I know that the library again, or the Agency of Education, I want to be clear, I'm not speaking for the Agency of Education, I'm speaking as like understanding the whole context of what's happening in this state. I do understand that the agency is looking at, is there another tier of grant opportunity, right? So right now there's the center track and there's the program track. I know that there have been conversations and plans around a regional technical assistance provider, and I wonder if that's where perhaps the Department of Libraries might be able to plug in, because that's made for organizations that go into programs. I think that maybe there could be some language shifted to make it more applicable to like the Department of Libraries to again receive those funds and be able to disperse them out. I just think that there are some non-policy options that are available. And again, I'm really, really concerned that if we open up Act 78 eligibility language and add things or separate out funds, then it diminishes the ability for the after school and summer advisory committee to be able to look at that progress across the state. And frankly, there will be other entities that will come forward and ask for a percentage of those funds. And then we've actually reduced equity, quite frankly. I know that the agency of ed, is very focused on schools. We have been pushing to support community-based organizations, to support others. And there has been some progress in that direction. Is it where we want it to be? No, but we're 2 years in. So
I don't see the equity now. That's what I'm trying to say. And we understood that school LEAs were to get the money. When I know that a lot of schools that do participate, they provide the schoolhouse for the after school program. Why shouldn't they get with this? When Addison does and Chittenden County does, according to this list.
I will say that there are far more entities, and we saw this with the funds that we administered, including the funds we're still administering for the Child Development Division for licensed programs to expand their access, is there are always far more applicants than there is money. While I have not looked at the Agency of Education's books, I think that they are fully expending on Act 78. They are doing it in a way that is setting aside the funds for the future years. They don't end up in a situation because each of those grants is either 3.5 years or 5 years. And so they're setting aside those funds. I understand that from a conservative approach, right? So I think they are fully expending those funds. Yes, there was some startup time in that very first year in which the committee was trying to form, they were trying to stand up the grant program, but I think they are making real progress. And again, I caution you all to think about what is to preclude 6 other entities, types of entities to come forward next year and to ask for funding for their own set aside. And then we've really lost that ability to look at after school and summer across the state.
Like what other entity might come forward, do you think?
Teen centers, mentor organizations.
So my review of that would be, this is a state agency. We're not at, and it's going to, that money's going to a state agency to disperse. If a private entity comes in, it's like, that's not what it's meant. It's meant for a state agency. So they can come in and ask, they can apply for this. If they're not applying for this, that's on them. The library right now was saying, we provide a service at very little money, and we're just looking to get a little bit more. If it can be sorted out up at the AOE and they get, a certain pot of money every year, then I don't think you need this legislation. But personally, I wouldn't want to wait to see how long it can take to work that out.
For others.
So let's just get to say I second, just about everything Senator Heffernan just said. It's a state agency that this would be going to, rather than, putting it in statute that it's going to private agency or private entity. And, well, actually, yeah, I'll just leave it there. I agree with what Heffernan said.
It's not actually written down, but it could be.
Right.
So that was new information for me, what you said. This is an ongoing revenue source. We're not expecting it to diminish. It's a growing revenue source. But you're saying that AOE sets aside the entirety of a 4-year grant as in that appropriation.
If they said that, they were here.
Grants.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they give an organization $100,000 a year for 3 years, they set it that over 3 years. Then at that year's budget, they don't take it out of next year,
Okay. I mean, but
all
we
in the
don't
first year.
do any of our other budgeting that way for the most part.
It ends up, it ends up being the same amount of money, but
The funds don't run out, is what you're saying.
but anyway, that's
Funds are
not the
flowing.
way to do it for whatever reason. I think to be very conservative. I think maybe partially because nobody's really sure yet how, because cannabis revenue in other states has gone. So that may be one thing, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so he explained it quite well. He said, you don't want to give out a $250,000 grant, deplete all that money that was given. So that $250,000 grant is.
No, I get it, but we don't do any of that budgeting that way.
Well, these are grants, I guess, over budgeting. So.
Yeah.
That money, once it's given to you, that's meant to be a grant.
Yeah,
So maybe on Thursday, we can explore this when Johannes
Yeah.
is back with the secretary. And we can get a feel for whether it feels like there is something that could happen quickly. The only ones who've been talking about the really simple application for smaller, or something that allows the association with the department to access funds themselves. So,
can you,
see if we get an answer that works.
can you ask the secretary to be prepared to talk about why they haven't collaborated with the libraries on Vermont Reads?
Yeah, I mean, it's a separate issue.
I mean, I've been trying to get more information on Vermont Reads, and they have a pending appropriation request that has not been granted by the appropriations committee.
You heard that right now, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to say something?
I did want to share there, in response to Senator's
Just to make,
question.
in case people can't see you are.
Sure, Catherine Delano, the state librarian and commissioner of the Department of Libraries. There has been a recent meeting on that topic.
Okay.
Not this past Friday, but the prior Friday, there was a meeting with AOE staff and the department about Vermont Reads. It was a preliminary conversation. So I just wanted to share that there has been a
Okay,
meeting.
okay. That seems like a more appropriate way for funds to flow to libraries from AOEs to me than this.
Possibly, the conversation was really very preliminary, so there wasn't any discussion of specifics. It was more about so the department supporting Vermont Reads.
So I think we're down to the single question with this bill.
The most important one.
Yeah.
To be earmarked funds.
Yeah, that's what we're.
Data at the library.
Book flag.
So anything else for us? Any other questions?
This is the thing that I'm happy to continue working with you on this, though. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Testimony for something.
Thank you.
So we're a joint hearing, finance committee at 2:15. So this, and we'll see what might set for financial 2:15.
Did you lose Tucker?
Well, we really weren't ready for final and then a vote, because this is, I think, the issue in front of us. I think otherwise, I guess we. Now that you say that, it probably could say, because the final walkthrough, that's in like the second, but I think we're good. I think it was, so it's up for, like, quite sensitive, except for that one issue.
Are we remote for the joint hearing or?
What are you doing here?
Can I get a remote link? I just don't think she's gonna make it.
I can almost guarantee that.
I was trying to like get her a nap.
Yeah, we can, just for the people watching, we're adjourning until we go into a joint hearing with Senate Finance at 2:15.